Hi, this is Vlhadus, and we're here at Vlhadus Gaming, and this is our first podcast for 1v1. And I am joined by ItsFayne. Hey, how are you doing today, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm so excited to do these little, one-on-ones with people and really just get to know the Ashes community a lot better.
Yeah. Like I told you before recording, this is an amazing idea. I think this
Yeah.
is going to be one of the greatest things out there. I'm so excited for it.
Awesome, man. I mean, me too. Like, I think with Ashes and meeting its community is just so important. And I think, a lot of other games, try to, segment its community, or there's not really that sense of like true community. I think Final Fantasy does its best, but I feel like with Final Fantasy, if you're not like an RPer or like a role player, like your community is just based down to the raid level, But I feel like for Ashes, because of all of the features that Ashes is going to present to the player base, there's going to be so many avenues for the players to go into very specific niches or very broad spectrums. I mean, it's going to be all over the place. But before we go,
Sure.
or I'm sorry, before we go into all that,
No, you're good.
I want to know about you. Like, what got you? Like, let's just say this first. How did you start your gaming career?
Ooh, okay. That was, and I'm going to date myself here, and so some people are going to be like, what? That was definitely Mario and Contra on the Nintendo, on the original OG Nintendo. Just really, I say that sometimes, and these Zoomers are like, what, Fortnite? What? Huh?
Dude, if you
Like,
go to my Welcome
you
to
don't
Vlhadus
know.
Gaming video, that's like my first thing is Contra and Super Mario Bros.
It was so good. It was such a good game, right? So I mean, I started being a console guy. I played Super Nintendo a ton. I still think Super Nintendo is the most underrated console of all time. I think everyone talks about Nintendo 64. I'm like, if you guys haven't played Chrono Trigger 100 times through, have you even really played a game?
Have you lived?
Right?
For sure.
I mean, how do you do it? But even then, like, I think I was into RPGs. I think RPGs were always the thing. Like Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo really got me into that kind of, what they say, the role-playing game. But it's not really a role there. But a little bit less of the moving around, jumping around. Everything's quick. Everything's a platformer thing. And I think I've always kind of push myself towards RPGs and MMOs, even though I have done some esports, and they were definitely not in the MMO RPG genre. It's such a passion, right? And I think a lot of people, it's a passion for them.
For sure. And so, you were an esporter. Like, for what game?
For Overwatch, in Contenders League, so the league below Overwatch League, and then also our team made it to the PUBG World Championships. The final 32 teams. We finished 31st because we're not good. No, we were good. We were just not that good. When there's 32 teams and you finish 31st, you're like, let's go hang out with those other guys that were below us.
And it's all about connections, man. It's all about connections. Because, back in high school, I played Halo 2 very competitively. I was an MLG gamer myself. Like, I did a lot of tournaments here in Texas. I went to, did tournaments here, Corpus, all over the place. And I loved it, and Halo back then in 2005 was like the thing. Like, if you weren't playing Halo, like, what were you doing with your life, basically? So...
What could you possibly play that wasn't Halo in 2005, right? That was it. It was Halo, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. It was like in high school, that was like the main game. But like, what led you like into MMOs?
So I'll give you my kind of MMO history. I have a very quick abridged version of this. I started off with this game called Nexus Kingdom of the Winds. It was like a 2D Korean MMO. They had ported it over here to America. And what really drew me in to this game was like, there were 4 classes, a warrior, a rogue, a mage, or a poet, which was your healer. And this game was released. This was the first MMO. Ultima Online wants to say this is the first MMO in the United States. It was extremely small, extremely niche. I think it had about 3,000 players at its max. It's still going to today. It's this real weird, it's very community driven, right? And I think that for me, everyone has that first MMO experience. They're always trying to get back to that first MMO experience. I'm always trying to get back to this MMO of, the crafting was basic, everything was basic. the game devs put on events for us every quarter. There would be some event, and you could click someone and you could go look at their legend, and it had all these little marks of what they've done, kind of represented with like tattoos, and it would say, oh, we did this in this year, and I braved the lost mines in this year, and you would do things like that. The big thing for me in getting into it was their subpath system. There were 4 what they called NPC subpaths. So once you hit max level, you would start gaining more and more stats. You would get experience, sell it for stats, and you would go to these NPCs, click on them, do a simple quest, you'd get a couple spells, and that was fine. But there were also, for each character class, 3 what they called PC, so player controlled subpaths. And this was like actual classes that were run by the in-game players with a hierarchy, with rules and stuff. And that was so much fun, being a rogue, and you're like, I can be a ranger or a spy or a merchant. You know, being a mage, you're like, oh, I can be a shaman or a necromancer or a diviner. Like, there were all these different great things, and getting to know people and some of the political games that would go on, I think is that's how you get that competitive itch back then for me. For sure.
And how old were you when you started playing that game?
Oh, I had to be
Were you
15,
in high school?
16?
Yeah,
I was in high school. It was high school. I might have been in middle school, actually. Now that I'm saying about that, I think I was in middle school. I think it was like 7th grade I started playing that game, and I just was so into it, just so unbelievable.
So you actually had like a pretty legit computer then? Was like a family computer?
It was my. I mean, it was a family computer, but no one else was allowed on it. It was just mine. You know? So we all had that. But I'm one of the weird MMO people out there. I'll tell you this, because I played that game and I loved that game so much, I missed the boat on WoW. I have not played WoW until recently.
What?
As an MMO gamer, I did not play WoW until I think 2015. And I played for about 8 hours because some friends are like, you have to come play WoW with us. And I'm like, okay, I'll try it. Everything was dead. All of the starter areas were dead. It was a miserable, like 2 4-hour game sessions. I'm like, there's no one around to help me with these quests. The world feels awful.
It's all about the end game.
And yeah, it's all about the end game. And I think that's, you know, one of the biggest mistakes is the journey, not the destination. I did competitive rating in both WildStar and SWTOR. And I will say that I regret doing that in both of those games, but specifically SWTOR. I don't know if you ever played too much of that.
I did, yeah.
It's going back years later and doing just the story quests for every single class. That game was all about the journey. The destination was fine. Early on, the destination sucked, but that was about the journey. And I think that's what's missing in so many games today.
A lot of people, you know, I'll say that the journey is so underrated. I always equate it to Game of Thrones. Season 8 sucked. You know, and if you're a Game of Thrones person, you know Season 8 absolutely sucked. But it doesn't invalidate the journey that took me to Season 8. Season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all that was awesome, meaningful memories, crying, happiness, sadness, all that stuff. And I feel like with MMOs, like the journey is just as important as its destination sometimes. And I know for myself, you know, when I played SWTOR, you know, I came out of it playing WoW, knowing the WoW experience, and I'm like, dude, this is all voice acted. I can select my dialogue. I can be a good Sith or a bad Jedi. Like, all that was super compelling to me as a WoW player because we didn't have that kind of laterality. Like, it was all very on rails. Like, you had to do what the quest told you to do. There was no distinction as to how you or your player character like felt, or if you didn't like your race or your class. I mean, it was just the SWTOR experience for me campaign wise was amazing.
And there was a lot more at endgame, right? I mean, with WoW, so I did play Shadowlands with my Ashes of Creation guild. We all jumped into Shadowlands, and I was like, all right, this is gonna be my WoW experience. And I'm like, oh, I get it. You go through whatever, you level up, you do the things, and then you grind dailies, and then you just raid until you hit whatever your maximum raid is. Like, whatever, you know, like we never went into mythic raiding. We just because the group that we had, we stopped at heroic raiding. We got AOTC, and we're like, okay, let's all just unregister and wait for the next expansion. That is such an unfulfilling. It's a dopamine hit every 2 years. Like I think that's
Yeah.
why WoW is failing. I think that's why when you look at a game like WoW, it's, oh, I'm here for the new content, and then it's gonna fall off. Oh, I'm here for the new content. All right, and then I'll go play Final Fantasy 14 or some other game.
And for me, I played WoW for almost 16 years, dude. 16 years of playing
Dedicated.
every expansion, every patch. I mean, did it take some breaks? Absolutely. But it was my game. That was the only game that I played. And to see its downfall, it just upsets me. And
so let me ask you a question here, because I love asking this question of WoW players. Do you think that, say, so you 16 years, do you think that the last half of that was because you still enjoyed playing the game, or were you hoping that every expansion carried the nostalgia that day one did?
I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
I wanted to have faith that they can do better. And every expansion was an ups and downs. You know, there was some expansions that did things good, and there were some expansions where they almost completely forgot their lessons learned from the previous expansion. And I think what made me finally quit this expansion, Shadowlands, was I couldn't take my own mental abuse anymore for the game, because I can't I don't have faith in Blizzard at all. And I lost all faith, and it wasn't because of the whole sexual allegations. Like I think that was, people can say that was like the final straw for certain people. I know for myself, like the guild that I was in, I wasn't too happy. It was friends of mine that I've known for a while, and I stuck around because this is what I've done. I've raided for so long. I guess it's almost like the same kind of like addiction, right, for smokers. Like you smoke for 15, 16 years, and you want to quit, but it's hard, you know, because it's something you've always done. In my spare time, I always logged into WoW and went into Discord or Vent and talked to my friends. So
well, and the addiction is, I think, what you said there, right? I think that's something that a lot of gamers need to look at with long-term games, because, and I think smokers is the best parable, right? I'm at work, I go outside and smoke on my smoke break with the other smokers who I socialize with. I'm a drinker. I go to the bar 3 nights a week, and I know who I'm going to see there. I'm going to see, you know, guy X, guy Y, and this couple here, and we sit at the bar and drink together all this time. For years we've done this, and so to give that up is harder than giving up the actual habit. It's giving up that socialization, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and I think that socialization is extremely important in an MMO. Extremely important. But all my friends started quitting, and it was just down to me and one other person, really. And I told her I couldn't stay anymore, not even for you, and not in a bad way. I mean, I did want to stay, but I couldn't do it even for my own mental health. And, you know, again, going into Ashes, there was just so much positivity on that side of the fence for me. And that's the same reason why I think a lot of people are playing Final Fantasy, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's such a positive environment. I've played Final Fantasy. I've given Final Fantasy so many shots, and the combat, the thing, it doesn't really do it for me. That being said, objectively, I can recognize Final Fantasy is an amazing game. The community within that game, it has very little toxicity. It is heavy on RP. There's a ton of content to do. Some of the story is a bit of a slog. Some of the stuff is a bit of a slog. The combat's not the greatest combat that's ever been invented. On paper, like, I don't like alts personally, and I'm not an altaholic.
I am
not an altaholic. Okay, so here's my thing. I am, and I'm working on getting over this. I think I'm gonna start just in preparation for Ashes. You know, people are like, oh, I'm gonna upgrade my computer. I'm like, I'm gonna go to therapy for this. I am an achievement hunter. And I'm aware that I'm not going to be able to 100% Ashes of Creation. And I know it's going to drive me nuts. I know there's going to be some achievement in my log where I'm like, I can't tick that off. So on paper, I should love Final Fantasy because I can do all of my achievement stuff and I can be any class that I want or any job that I want on one character. I don't have to mess around with another character. Alts in Final Fantasy come down to very much the look, your aesthetic, what you want to be,
playstyle,
who you want to represent, your playstyle. Yeah. And so it's, you know, I can just come over and it's just clicking a button or slotting a gem. I forget exactly what it is. But I can go and be a ninja or a mage or some sort of warrior or a healer, a paladin. That's such an inspired system, right? It's just such an inspired system.
Oh, for sure. And so talking about like Final Fantasy, a little bit, like how far did you go expansion wise? Did you go up to Shadowbringers or
No, I got through the last time I really gave it a solid shot. I got through Heavensward.
Heavensward's so good.
Yeah, it's very good, right?
It's
It's
awesome.
just there wasn't enough. I didn't really have. So I played it. I played it like a lot of MMO players play. I played it very much single player. I didn't have a large
Yeah.
friend group or a large gaming community that was into it. So I got in. I did it for the experience. I tried to push through it. I enjoyed my time. I really did enjoy my time. I enjoyed maxing out other jobs, but a few jobs into it, I'm like, okay, well, this is just kind of another grind in the same way.
Yeah.
It started to feel where if I'm talking and I've asked, like I said, I've asked that WoW players a lot of questions, and I'm really curious as to the psychology there. A lot of players in WoW, the alts are some of the end game as well. Is getting my shaman and my paladin and my this and my that. Getting them all through the content is a part of the gameplay cycle, and so it felt like that. It just started to feel I'm like kind of I'm doing my hunting log, I'm doing my same stuff, but it's very grindy. It's duty roulette every day, but today it's for my other job. So that's where it lost me a little bit.
I think the alt problem is more indicative to the lack of content problem. So in WoW, in order to keep playing with limited content, you just did the same content in a different way, which is your different alt, right? So if you played a warlock, you did the warlock experience doing those same dailies, same quests, same whatever, and then now you can do it under the aesthetic of a warrior, or a demon hunter, and so as a WoW player, you just sort of learn to drag it out, really. But I think it's really more indicative of a content problem. But going and asking you a little bit further, what was your sort of like stopping point? Like, what was your main game, and then what was the stopping point that happened for you to then say, like, looking onto brighter horizons for like Ashes of Creation?
So kind of going back to the hardcore raiding thing, we were trying to push for some world first stuff in SWTOR. And did you do any of the raiding in SWTOR at all?
No, so I only played I played SWTOR in the very beginning super limitedly, because back when it first launched, there was a lot of issues, login queues, launcher problems, and so when I was able to play, I treated it the same way I treated Final Fantasy. I did it as a single player cinematic experience. So I only got up to like level 30 back on that time, but I have gone back and I got up to level 60, completed like the basic story and stuff, which was freaking awesome. Like, I love the Old Republic stuff, dude. I mean, if you're a Star Wars fan and never played Old Republic, I would just do it for just like the cinematic storytelling, because they did such a great job with the lightsaber battles, just the conflict that you were experiencing was so good. And I did it as a Sith, I didn't do it as the Republic. But it was great, but I didn't do any end game like at all.
And it was rough, like you said. I think you drilled it, so it was rough from start to finish. And so the final boss in the very first raid, it was a 3-phase fight. You DPS'd it in phase 1, just had to stay out of the bad. Phase 2, it's on a platform, and all the platforms drop into these different shards, and you kind of have to run down them, and you have to make a good amount of time to get to the 3rd phase. Well, we would wipe on that phase, and when we re-entered the instance, the platforms would not reset. And so we got extremely frustrated that essentially we have one shot at this boss per week until they fix this bug. And it sort of made our gaming community break up somewhat, our raid group break up, which is bad because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I have over here we got Mando and Grogu. This is Grogu that was hand drawn by someone in New Orleans. This it's hard to see on the angle. This is the Empire Strikes Back Luke's lightsaber with our Jedi Republic symbol. I've got the Empire symbol here. We're waiting for Vader's one there. We're gonna do Star Wars sleeves. We're gonna absolutely do Star Wars sleeves.
Dang,
I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm excited for it, but it was tough to see that. And so, we moved into WildStar. The group kind of fell apart, got back together, moved into WildStar. We pushed for the raid. We were world 3rd in the raid, and we missed it by like a week. It was a huge attunement process, a huge leveling process, and then the game kind of exploded, and we're like, all right, whatever. And that's when I really took a step back from MMOs. I would dabble. I tried ESO. I tried random. I think I did Arcade a little bit. I did Black Desert Online a little bit. My best memory in Black Desert Online was AFK fishing was great. I think that was a great system. You should always allow AFK fishing, guys. Fishing's the best in any game. And then it was 2017, and
WoW, though. I'm just saying.
Yeah, not in WoW. Don't do it in WoW, guys.
No, fishing's horrible in WoW. Don't do it.
It's awful in WoW. It was really bad. We'll get to modern MMOs because I think New World did fishing amazing. I think it was one of the best fishing games I've ever had. But 2017, people always ask what got various people into Ashes, and it's a question I like to ask people as well, because I'm always curious to see when various people got into the community and what their impression is based on when they did. I watched a Lazy Peon video about this random MMO that really seemed to do it, and the cinematics that they had already looked great, and the systems that he was talking about looked great. I know everyone got in this like recent Lazy Peon video. Go back and watch that old school Lazy Peon video. It will get you. No, genuine... 2017 is the hype.
Oh, 2017. There's another one.
That is the first one. The recent one was the one that got this new wave in. 2017 was what turned me onto it, and I'll never forget. I was bartending at the time in a restaurant, and I had a timer set on my phone, and it went off, and I said okay. And I went up down the bar and I made sure everybody's wine was full. Everyone had water, the food was gone. And I looked at my bar back and I was like, watch the bar. And I ran into the bathroom. I pulled out my phone. I pulled out my credit card and backed this thing on Kickstarter instantly. I was like, I want to be in so early. I had so much faith in this game from day one. I also backed Crowfall, so maybe my judgment was a little off back then. But but that was it. Super hype.
At least it actually came to fruition, right? So at least you can say Crowfall actually made it to live instead of it being just in Kickstarter hell,
Which is fine. I mean, I'm a very business-minded person, and I want to get your opinion about this. What do you think about the future of MMOs or games in general as it comes to crowdfunding, to crowdfunding as the initial source?
Ooh.
It's a big question. I know. I just hit you with a big one there.
Yeah, that is. So I think when people get financially invested is when passion can turn to anger very quickly. Mm-hmm. And because they have an emotional stake in it, right? So I mean, I think if you can only back up a project, let's say to a max of $15, then not so bad, right? But when you have packages that can be 100, 200, 500, 1,000, hell, there's been other projects too that I'm not going to name, but you've probably seen $5,000 buy-ins of just crazy amounts. I think that's where you kind of see not too much of a good principle there from the very get. But I do think crowdfunding an MMO can be a success. I mean, I think you can't really look at Ashes in that way because they weren't trying to raise money. Like even Steven said it, they were really more trying to see, is this an MMO that people would play? And by the backing of that MMO proved to them that, okay, we have something here, right? Even though we have a little bit of hardcore principles, the idea behind it, people actually like. And that was the whole goal for Steven in the Kickstarter. It wasn't really to get funds to support this game. The game was already completely self-funded by Steven. But what would happen, right, if you were to get completely self-funding of an MMO project? I think if you don't deliver, you're at the mercy of a lot of people. And,
which you won't. So Ashes is the largest Kickstarter game of all time. I think we got like 3.2, 3.3 million.
Yeah.
Anyone that's familiar with game development, that is a drop in the bucket.
Oh, for
3.2,
sure.
3.3 million, you can make like smaller, less interesting Valheim, right?
Yeah.
Among Us. You could get an Among Us style game. It's such a so I think you touched on two things that I just kind of want to address because I think that they're really important. It is to check interest, right? It is essentially marketing. It's getting people to buy in early, not because they need your 100, 500, 1,000. I personally know multiple people that are in at least at the 2,500 level in Ashes. I know one that's at the 5K level and one that did do the 10K level. It's not a terrible ask, right? I know people look at that and say, "Oh, this is a really bad ask." But if you make 50 grand a year, right, and you're backing at the $500 level, most people would say that's reasonable. If you make $1 million a year, backing at the $10,000 level is literally the same amount in terms of a ratio of your income, right? So it's
sure.
that I think that's one thing that I always really want to address with those, and I think some of the things I want to go to the Win and have dinner with Steven. That would be cool, right?
Oh, dude.
Same way.
Just to ask him questions. I would love to just chat with him for like 15 minutes if I could, and just and just chat with him about certain things. It'd be awesome.
No, it's but a lot of it's just a show, right? When I signed, so I backed at the $500 level. I got in a little early, so I had a little bit of a discount. I think I was in for like $435. But they've been releasing
you got
cosmetics.
the lifetime subscription though, didn't you?
Yep.
Oh,
Lifetime
dude,
sub.
If only I could have got. I could do the 275 level. 2021. I think I got mine in October 2021.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? So we're talking about how great this community is, right? How positive this community is. I want to point something out. I have not seen any, let's call it classism, between people that backed in Kickstarter, that backed in the Summer Backer, that backed in any package pre-Alpha 1, that backed even today. If you back tomorrow for the smallest amount that they will let you back at, the community's like, hey, glad to have you here. Welcome. Any questions about it? Let us know. This has been surprisingly the least toxic community that I have ever been a part of. I followed WildStar, Guild Wars 2, a lot of these games right up through development. Any game that would tell us about their development, I would be following it for all these little tidbits of information, and the community was always toxic, right? And I think that this community is just so unbelievably incredible when it comes to that. Everyone's super on the whole, everyone is super welcoming and really excited.
You're always going to have outliers, but I think we are crafting a similar kind of community to Final Fantasy. I really do. And I think that's awesome to start from the very get. And I was on a recent podcast with the Golden Feather, and I said, I think it's awesome the fact that literal guilds are being created right now before the game's even out. Communities can start forming, and the one big drama that I think always happens, right, especially at the very beginning of an MMO, is the MMO launches, right? You enter a guild, you think this guild's going to be cool, there's one person you like, but then you start going into Discord, you start noticing other personalities there, it's not meshing with you, you're leveling as this is happening, and you're like, I kind of want to quit this guild because like I'm not really vibing with them, but it's going to be hard for me to find another guild that's going to be a semi like with the same ideals that I have, or whatever the case is. Like, and then you're like with this between like a rock and a hard place, right? Because you're playing the game now, the game's live, like, and with Ashes, you can try on different guilds all before the launch of the game. Like, you can go and play other games and see, like, is this guild leader someone that I can respect? Is this someone that I can actually follow? And you can get all that stuff done early, which I think is going to be so good, because most of the time it's always drama based because of personality clash, ideals that clash.
You join a toxic guild because that happens to be the node that you ended up in, right? You're in, this node, we're in this node, and so this is the big guild, so let's join them, but you don't really have fun there. You don't really enjoy that guild. So I'm essentially senior leadership in one of the larger guilds that is very Ashes of Creation driven right now. And we had somebody join the other day, and he came in and did something that I respect immensely. He said, can we jump into voice for 20 minutes and just you tell me about your guild? And I did. And I said, so what are you looking for? And he said, XYZ, ABC. And where I said, okay, well, this is what our opinions are on that. This is how we're treating these. This is how we would handle that situation. And he ended up liking it and joining it. But I've also had dozens of those conversations where someone's like, maybe your guild isn't hardcore enough for me. Maybe your guild is too hardcore for me. Maybe you guys have different goals than I have. Now is the time to guild shop, right? Now is the time to go out there and find your people, right? And then also be a part of influencing how they tackle the game. It's such an exciting time to be around Intrepid Studios.
Oh, for sure. So like just one video, that one Lazy Peon video literally made you go to the bathroom.
Yep.
Finish watching, go to the Kickstarter, and back it $500.
Easy. It wasn't even a question.
So you didn't even get the perspective of Steven. You only got the perspective of Lazy Peon.
Yeah. There wasn't that much out there. I think at the time, Lazy Peon, and I was watching first of all, if you've ever played an MMO and you're not subscribed to Lazy Peon.
Oh, I know. You're
failing
at life.
Whoa, right. Like, I think it's like what? It's Kira TV, Lazy Peon, Force Gaming, and this YouTube channel. Get a little plug in there for you. Those are the big ones that you watch, right? And I think that Lazy Peon has really good takes on stuff. So when to see a guy that has a style of, here's a game, I'm gonna play it, here's the pros, here's the cons, I'm gonna make some weird character with a weird name, and it's all the same thing and they're all entertaining. To see him go out and do a video that's in a totally different format, a totally different style, something that is just absolutely out of his norm, literally break up if there was a Lazy Peon style guide for his YouTube channel, he just is like, I'm ignoring it this time because I'm so hyped for this game. And I think he had a little chat from Steven there too. Death's Proxy, who was around in the community a little bit more back then, not so much now, he made a couple videos about it. And just watching the little bit that was out there, if you weren't hyped for this game back then, you didn't have a soul. You just didn't have a soul. If you saw that video and you weren't hyped, something's wrong. You played too much League of Legends, I think. I don't know. It's ripped it out of you. I don't know what's going on.
Or you play too much Warcraft, because in 2017, I did not hear about this game at all. And I had like blinders, like World of Warcraft was it. Everything else was irrelevant. And so for me, my first time actually experiencing Ashes of Creation wasn't the Lazy Peon. I was watching Asmongold, on his stream, and he saw the Lazy Peon video, and then he got in contact with Steven, and he was on his way to Las Vegas, and so I got to see the Lazy Peon video with Asmon's reactions and I think McConnell, along with him talking to freaking Steven. And this is also at the same time I'm playing World of Warcraft. We can't even get a dev to talk to a freaking content creator. And this dude is all like, I'm in a car, I'll get in Discord with you and I'll just talk to you while I'm driving to Las Vegas. I'm like, how does this happen?
And then when there was a little bit of hype around it, what did he do? He's like, hey, Shroud, Tim, why don't you guys get together? Another couple more huge. Or no, was it? No, Summit he talked G1. To Shroud, Summit, and Tim. He did Summit and Tim, and then he also talked to Shroud. I mean, Steven is not stupid when it comes to marketing, right? He's very intelligent in that kind of stuff. I've looked into a lot of Steven's background. People have had the MLM conversation about Steven ad nauseum. It doesn't exist. But I live in California. I had my real estate license for years. I have access to programs that can parse transactions. I've seen what Steven has done. I don't see, and that was something else I did very early on. I didn't see a record of him being like a slumlord and just having shitty apartments that have constant complaints against them that he's just buying and selling and flipping and stuff. He made solid investments, made solid improvements, looking at the things. And I'm like, okay, what he's done in the past tells me who he is as a person. Yeah. He is a honest, forthcoming person who's just, this is a passion project, and he has what every gamer in the world wants. And I think that's why there is a little bit of Steven hate out there from people on the outskirts of the community. The guy went, he got his bag, and he's now making the game that he's always wanted to play. Isn't that what we all want? Isn't that what we all want? Is just to sit in a room with a bunch of developers and be like, make this and go. And then they just go and make it.
Oh yeah. I always said, if I was in Steven's shoes, I would have done the same exact thing, because I was so fed up with World of Warcraft. I'm like, if I had that kind of money to burn and I had connections already, because it seemed like in 2015 he had Sony developers and like friends of his that actually developed games, and he was like, well, why don't we like actually do something? Like, I can fund the damn thing and we can just make it. And when I started seeing all those interviews, like, the one thing that is insanely hard to replicate on this universe, or in this universe, is genuine passion. Steven is not faking his passion.
Not even a little bit.
You can't fake that. And when you do try to fake that, it's so easy to spot the irkiness, salesman nature of it, and it doesn't come across the same. And so every time when I see people are like, oh, it's a scam, you guys are getting scammed, it's like, these are the same people that haven't even really heard this dude speak in any capacity. And, you know, every single major content creator that's talked to Steven, most of them are wanting to be very like hopeful like I am, but some of them are cautiously optimistic, right? Because anything could happen. They can go in some crazy direction that people aren't expecting or whatever, which I think I find it very doubtful, because Steven wants to play the damn thing. I don't think he wants to play something that's going to be exactly like not what he wants or desires or envisions. But yeah, like every video that I've ever seen of Steven, man, it exudes passion. And I think for me, I've always been a very passionate person myself when it comes to games. I want to win. I want to play a good game. And that's why I'm really hyped for Ashes, because I do think he's really onto something, because I think MMOs lost their principles in what is a good game loop. Like for SWTOR, like what was it that made, besides the rating, because I was a huge raider myself in World of Warcraft, but didn't you find the game loop to be just somewhat monotonous? Like it just...
it was awful, right? You get to max level, and now you have to early on go and do 3 weeks worth of dailies and weeklies to get enough tokens to trade in so that you can have gear that will even give you a chance of entering the raid. And then it just became raids. Some of the PvP was fun. Hut Ball was amazing. Everyone loved Hut Ball. I mean, it was essentially rugby in Star Wars land. It was great. But that wasn't enough. You know, the starship fighting back then was an on rails experience. It was extremely basic. There was definitely some passion. The game clearly was pushed really early, but the gameplay loop was the story. I am a Jedi, but I'm gonna pick the dark side option and cut this guy's head off. You know, that was the gameplay loop here. And I think we're gonna have to redefine gameplay loop as we get into Ashes. Personally, I think that the gameplay loop is gonna look extremely different for every person. I think that my girlfriend does not play video games. She does not. We did a live stream from PAX West with Bartik. She's not a gamer at all. We did a pack break on some Pokemon cards. The names she came up with these Pokemon cards were insane. It was like Marshmallow with Bee Butt. And I'm like, okay, like she does not game, right? That being said, I've shown her a lot of Ashes, and it's interesting to her. She likes the concept, and she would probably be someone who would life skill and stay on her freehold and it would end up being a badass freehold. She would decorate it. It would look great. It wouldn't be min-maxed, that's for sure, but it would be an amazing looking freehold. She'd probably sit in the character creator for the first week of the game launch and just make that kind of stuff. That's what she likes. And that is a completely genuine game loop within Ashes of Creation, is just making your freehold as great as you can, and you'll be the greatest freehold maker, and people will pay you to come help them make their freeholds. You're not going to be a raider or a PvPer or a mayor or anything like that, but you can cut out that niche for yourself and just be known as that.
Oh yeah. And what's so crazy you bring up is you said your wife?
Girlfriend, fiance. She's already calling herself my wife, so
Okay.
we understand where this is going, right? We understand what I'm into.
No, for sure. So, you know, my future wife, because I'm actually going to be married in August. So,
Oh, congrats.
Oh, thank you, thank you. She has never played MMOs. She's an old school gamer, Donkey Kong, like Super Nintendo games. Like she's played all of them. Bomberman, she's a huge Bomberman person. And what's so crazy is like in just me explaining to her Ashes of Creation, her not knowing a single iota of what even happens in a game loop or even in an MMO, she's like, I really want to play this game with you because you're like you're so passionate about it. I have to experience what this game is. She's like, I have to. And this is someone again does not play MMOs.
It's amazing. That's the stories that we want. Those are the people we want in the community. Bring some fresh blood, because the MMO player base is dying, and those that are here have accepted that I'm going to go play Final Fantasy for 3 months, and then I'm going to jump over to WoW for 3 months, and then I'm going to go play some other random little game for 3 months, and then I'm going to go jump into the new Valheim update. We're so squirrely because there isn't a home. I think World of Warcraft gave players back in the day a home. That was partially because it was the only place there, right? It was like a desert and somebody built one building. Great. Well, there's a lot of buildings now.
Yeah. It was almost like Stockholm Syndrome, really. It wasn't really a home. It was more like, don't leave ever or we'll beat you.
I think it was a good home, but it was...
It was a good home. It was a good home. And then it transformed into Stockholm Syndrome. I'll say that was for myself. Like, it was so bad. But going into, you know, game loops and stuff like that. So, in your opinion, what is the most important feature? And I'm not saying a specific feature like the node system, the caravan system, and Ashes, but in overall MMOs, what do you think is the most important feature an MMO should implement or do?
So, and this is hard. I'm gonna give you a word, and then we're gonna have to explain it off because it sounds obvious. Content.
Yes. Well,
content.
I'll say 2 more words before that word. Evergreen content.
Evergreen content. The part of the issue with creating content is that it cannot be created at this point in time fast enough that gamers will consume it, because somebody is going to consume. There was a great meme going around when New World launched, and it was, you know, that he's like, there's a guy on the couch and it's 200 hours of New World in the first 2 weeks. He turns and shoots the guy, and it's, why no content? Well, because we consume content, especially of things that we're excited about, at an extremely quick rate. I know I am planning to take time off for this game. I don't know anyone that's not planning to take time off for this game. We're all going to be taking time off to get into this game and get that initial push. But sometimes that content, if it's not, like you said, evergreen, if it's not continuous, if it's not dynamic, you've got a 3 to 6 month life cycle, and then the content's been done. I did that. I did the thing. I checked off all the boxes. I got my achievements. I got the rare mount that I wanted. I have the best in slot armor with the highest eye level that's perfectly balanced for my spec. I'm doing the most DPS in my raid. I'm now done. I'll see you all when I have something to strive for again, because I have nothing to strive for anymore. I've beaten the game. And the whole thing with an MMO is that it shouldn't be able to be beaten. You should always have something that you want to do.
Something meaningful that you'd want to do. Because I know in World of Warcraft, the one thing that always really disappointed me, you know, even if I was like a developer, is that every expansion wasn't really expanding the game. It was like a rinse off of all of it, and then now you're starting fresh. So there was like whole features that were done in that expansion that you'll never really experience in a sort of relevant way ever again. And it's like, how is a game like that going to be like have a long-term plan? You know, and World of Warcraft is so short-sighted in their expansions that they have so much content, but 90% of it is completely irrelevant for most people. Because
going into Shadowlands, it was I flew around on a flying mount for 3 days with some people with these 10-minute timers. We killed a boss. I got gear. I got up to a certain eye level. Great. I appreciate that you have put in 16 years to this game, but my item level is just as relevant as yours now, and we just maxed it out again. I appreciate that you don't want to lock people out of previous content, especially when that previous content is dead. Like my first experience of these areas are dead. There's no one to do quests with. No one's even playing this area of the game. So it's hard to get new players. You always want at least somewhat of a trickle of new players coming in, buying the game, subscribing to the game. But just this catch-up mechanic of like, you don't need anything and you're ready to go. You're good to go. Day one, get right in here and start doing it. It's unhealthy. If you can allow people to come into the world naturally and accept that I am behind, there aren't catch-up mechanics. The catch-up mechanics that I have will be making friends, joining a guild. They'll already have a bunch of stuff. They can craft me better gear. I can have better gear than they had when they were my level. Like that should be the catch-up mechanic, is the social interaction, not just I press a button or I swipe a credit card and I'm max level with decent enough gear.
And so, because again, you know, I didn't really play SWTOR in the sense of expansion, so I'm just wondering if it's similar to Warcraft. So you played like expansions worth of
yes.
Star Wars, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if you went onto a new expansion, did that new expansion, everything previous, was it all invalidated?
A lot of it was, not everything, but I think a lot of it was, and I think a game that I did play actually pretty aggressively, that did this really well was Guild Wars 2, where they said in development process, if you get a legendary, that will be your best in slot item forever. We will add more legendaries to the game. So I had a warrior. There was a legendary weapon called Twilight. Legendaries took months and months and months of grinding to get. You had to do a lot of different things. And to this day, that sword is relevant. If I want to run that sword, it is relevant within the game. Now they've added legendary armor, legendary mounts. Now there's multiple legendary swords. There's legendaries off of legendaries, but the power creep is just, it's a stat differential. It's not actual power creep. It's not that you've done all of this, you have mythic. Why in a game like World of Warcraft and in that mentality of the gear treadmill, why can you do mythic level rating, have all of your best in slot mythic level gear, a new expansion drops, and a week later you're just at the same eye level as everyone else? Where's the enjoyment in that? Right? There's no goal. It almost feels useless to me at some point. So at least in a game like Guild Wars 2, where you make that progression, it sticks. You did it. It shouldn't be invalidated.
So are you more of a fan of vertical progression or horizontal?
I think both have their place, honestly. Okay. I think that both have their place. I think that there are people that enjoy both, so you need to have something that you can strive for. But I think horizontal progression is the longer term vision. I think that's the kind of really big-headed thing, right? It's you can day trade stocks, you'll probably make a little bit of money here and a little bit of money there. Let me tell you, if you buy Amazon and just hold, you're probably going to make a lot of money in the long term. And then that's what the game developers really need to look at, is the long term, is how do we keep people in here, not just, oh, there's a new expansion, there's a new patch, so we have even more powerful gear, throw away all that other gear. Because I think people, they'll do it. Like you said, we all have Stockholm Syndrome. We're all just being held captive, but we appreciate the people that are holding us captive. It's a matter of also not invalidating our efforts from before. And I think gamers are not stupid people. We know when all of the effort that we've done has been invalidated because we see something new come out. There's an even better sword now, and it's okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and just throw this in a chest somewhere in my house and go get the new sword, because that's the new benchmark. That's where the benchmark sits.
Yeah. I know for me, I always thought like horizontal progression for rating would have been amazing. Because I never understood this principle where, okay, new expansion comes out and then you have a person, right, that's like interested in the game, never played it. Like the whole game is new. Like, yes, a new expansion just came out, but I hate this, not hate, but it's just, I don't understand this whole like, oh, I want to play like the new thing. Like, because the game to you is all new. So if you had to start like at raid 1, right? And there's 9 raids, right? The first 3 are the first base game. The 4 through 6 is the expansion. And then, you have the last part, which is like the second expansion. Like, why as a new player starting from the very first raid wouldn't be a great experience? You know what I'm saying? And then progressing through there, because then, like, yes, if you started day one, then you're going to be rating the 6 or the 7, 8, 9 raids because you've already done all those other ones. But that's how guilds can start being created and be like, hey, we're a mid guild, tier rating guild, or whatever the case is, and this is where we are in our progression. You know, it makes everything feel validated, and you have all of this content to experience rather than the new raids out. You just have this one raid to do all the time for weeks and weeks until we do the next expansion or the next patch, and then the next raid comes in. To me, I just think it's a very short-sighted vision. And again, you literally almost mind wipe the players, because we get so tired of doing the same raid like over and over and over again. It's just, I really hope Ashes gets that correct, because, you know, I'm really curious to see how the rating system is going to be, or if there really is going to be a traditional rating system. I don't know.
It doesn't seem to be too traditional, right? Which is interesting, because I do want to point out something that you said that I love, this concept of there's 9 raids. You have a low tier, a mid tier, and high tier. Developers claim, have you ever seen a developer say that they're not a gamer? Every developer says they're a gamer, right? If you put the best in slot gear for the whole game in the first raid, I guarantee you we're gamers. If all the gear beyond that is super awful and shitty, we will still do all of those raids. We will 100%, because we want to complete the content. We want to experience the content, because it's all about content. You don't need to dangle a new carrot in front of us. But you can just have kind of a carrot. You can have a carrot and an apple and some celery. Like, it doesn't need to be something better every single time.
Yeah. And so the more I try to go into the rating content, I don't try to claim that I know all this information on Ashes. If you go to the, you know, Ashes Creation Wiki, oh my God, it's a rabbit hole of information into one hole to another hole. It's crazy. So what are you wanting from Ashes Creation from a raid perspective, since I know you're just like a hardcore raider like myself?
You know, for me, I want something that is accessible. I don't want to do the like super world firsty kind of hardcore stuff. I think that in Ashes, all of it comes down to politics, and I think that that's kind of the real interesting metagame, right? We're adding that EVE Online political thing to it. So I think rating is finally kind of been brought full circle, where it is a whole experience. And I kind of want to explain this by saying, like, okay, we have our guild. We're going to send our raid team in. Why are we going to send our raid team in? Because there's some great crafting components at the end of this raid. Well, that only really hits a certain subsect of your PvE players. But how do we hit the rest? Well, the dragon at the end, you have to mine because its scales are so hard. So one of our raid people needs to be a very high level miner, right? And need to have spec'd into that so that you even have the possibility of harvesting this resource. Well, what else? Well, we need a decent composition, not a min-max composition, a decent composition, because there are, you know, secret passageways and all these things that they've hinted at, all these, every archetype having these kind of abilities to help you get through this content. But the real key here is, hey, PvP squad, you need to be behind us the whole way, because we do not want to get ganked. It is not an instanced raid. You don't enter and you're safe anymore. 80% of this content being open world means we need to have a PvP group that's thirsty to do some PvP in with us, coming with us, kind of escorting us, so that when we finally do go for that boss and we're attacking the world boss, or we're attacking the raid boss, and another guild or community or whatever comes in and starts attacking it, we have a squad that can come help us out and wipe them. We've never in raiding, not never, but on the whole, we've never needed PvP focused players to help us with the PvE content. This will be some of the first time that'll happen. And we're starting to really see that interdependency between PvP and PvE. You want to be a wealth baron? You want to be economically rich? Run your caravan. You're going to need some PvPers with you. You're a PvPer and you want really good gear? You're going to rely on the crafters, because it just doesn't drop gear. You're not going to see dropped gear. They're finally weaving it all together, right? Because otherwise you could just sit. How many people do you know that have a PvP alt? it gears out and they only log onto that alt to do PvP. There's no other content that's relevant to them.
No, you're totally right, and you actually touched on a few things. So I'll just say, from my perspective for raiding for Ashes of Creation, I would like a traditional raid system, but I'm down for something new too. I know Steven did say something about there was going to be more like legendary, epic, rare mats dropping from bosses more so than completed gear, which I really like that, because I think RNG for a lot of people is a very outdated system in the sense where people just don't like it. I think people like more consistency. And I think a tiny bit of RNG is fine. My whole thing is that I would love, and this is going now into the profession system, a lot of when you become a master blacksmith, you have raid, like end game raid recipes that are best in slot for plate people or for heavy armor people. And so really you're going to the raid to pump mats into your master blacksmith so he can make gear for people. And it's all guaranteed. Like, you just need the mats. And if the mats are guaranteed from that dragon every time, then RNG is kind of out the window. And it's basically kind of like when there was like a super rare mount that could potentially drop. People don't mine RNG when it comes to that. I think people mine more when it comes to like gear. But I think if you really funnel it and make a very extensive, amazing profession system to where, you know, again, I think this game is going to be completely focused on guilds and community, which it should. And I've heard so much debate back and forth, and me and my friend Val talk about this, about vendors and professions. And, you know, with Final Fantasy doing its vendor system and token system, which I think is a good system, but you know, I think that has its place, you know, for that game. But I think, you know, we don't have to mimic every system, you know, one for one. I think, you know, I would love a robust profession system. So like,
it makes because you dropped onto something about the RNG, and this is an idea that I have said a lot, and I love this idea.
All right, say it.
So the Golem boss at the end, Steven, listen. The rock golem boss at the end of the raid. Yeah. You bring a miner, because that's how you mine the golem for the rare golem ore for that legendary amazing gear. Well, if your miner is they can't mine the golem at all if they're below skill level 80, right? Just throwing random numbers in the air. If they're 80 to 85, they'll get 1 to 3 pieces. If they're 85 to 90, maybe 1 to 5 pieces. And as their skill level goes up, you can raise the ceiling and also bring up the floor. So if I bring a level 100 miner, I'm guaranteed 6 to 13 pieces of this ore. Well, now you have to, when you're talking about your raid comp, crafting is now involved in your raid comp, because why do we want to do this boss 20 times to get what we could get out of it once? It would make no sense. That's where I'm really excited for things like that to exist within this game.
Oh, for sure. And I think the other thing about it too is that you can't be every profession like in Final Fantasy. From what Steven says, you're going to be able to artisan into a profession. Now, I don't know if you can answer this for me, but how does that work into the 3 separate? So there's going to be gathering, processing, and
it's gathering, processing, and crafting is how they're calling it. Crafting, yeah.
So is it to my knowledge that you can only be an artisan in one of the 3, or in just one of the 3? Does that make sense? You will be able to do very lightly random things in all of them. This is to my understanding, having gone and looked at this a lot. Okay. You will be able to push into one of the 3 artisan trees. So, you know, crafting. Let's say I want to be the best axe maker, right? So I'll be able to do some very base level gathering, some very base level processing, but I will be good at crafting. Now, even within crafting, I'm gonna have to specialize and put those points into weaponsmithing. And within weaponsmithing, I'm gonna have to go down the axe tree. And if I say somewhere in creating and doing my crafting, you know what, I want to put like 2 points into this sword because I'd like to make the sword for myself, and that'd be really great to have at level 35 as I'm leveling up. You might not be able to top out and have that super high legendary axe because you wasted a point somewhere.
So
Okay.
being able to have those, it's so specialized. Now, maybe I can make legendary axes. I'm the best axe maker on the server. Everyone knows you go to Fayne, you get your legendary axes.
Yeah,
There's
which I love.
also, which is amazing, that kind of reputation stuff. But maybe I'm like, I don't really want to make legendary materials. My guild isn't that into raiding. I won't have that many raid materials that I'll be able to even have access to outside of buying them. So I'm going to only get up to like the epic tier of gear, but you can come to me for an epic axe, sword, spear, mace, whatever you want, right? So I didn't raise my ceiling, but I kind of widened the base. So now you can come to me for a lot more, but not as amazing.
Got you. So, for how passionate you are in like loving Ash's creation and all the base systems that are there, like, what do you think Intrepid may do that people won't like?
I mean, we're really gonna have a cosmetics conversation, right? I mean, we're already seeing hate. I think people are gonna love the cosmetic system. I truly do. I love the cosmetic system.
I think casuals will love it for sure.
I think it's how you keep casuals in the game. I think some people are gonna hate it. I think some people hate the fact that there are items. You can go on the wiki right now, and you can find a list of items that you will never have access to. You will just never ever have access to. I think that people like me that are that achievement hunter type are gonna feel really bad that we can't do everything. You know, that they're when I do X, I can't do Y. When I join the Thieves Guild, I can't be part of the Scholars Academy. That kind of stuff, the choice will make gameplay more impactful because choice matters. That's a big thing. Every game has a little tagline. The fact that Ashes isn't choice matters at this point, I think is ridiculous. It should be the second you choose A, then that means you're not going to be very good at B and you can't even touch C. And if you want to go and be like, no, never mind, I want to do C, you lose all of your progress in A, right? Those choices being that way, I think are so impactful. And I think there will be a good portion that will feel bad because they're locked out of something. They can't do everything. But I think in the end, in the long term, most people are going to actually enjoy it because they feel more impactful, because at the end of the day, everyone can do everything in a lot of games. I imagine when you get to the end of Final Fantasy, everyone can do everything. So you're not special by being an amazing paladin or a great dragoon or a great black mage. There's no value in that because everyone can do that. Everyone has that ability. You've made choices, and that's going to put you somewhere on a hierarchy tier or somewhere really on I always envision it as a tree with just 10,000 concurrent branches going out in every direction, and everyone is going to be very unique. You're not going to see two people built the same. You're not going to see two people crafting the same. I think that will end up in the long term being something people look back at fondly or enjoy currently if they're still playing. But in the short term, I think we're going to hear a lot of complaints. But I'm kind of curious. What do you think? Being newer to the game, being newer to the community, what is something that you think Intrepid either is doing or seems to be going down the wrong path about that people are going to complain about?
Well, and the reason why I asked that question is because this is still testing, right? Like, I see so many people in the Discord sometimes are like, "Oh, this is the way it is." Nothing is what it is. Technically, Steven can change his mind at any time and say, "Hey, we had in our discussions, we're changing it this way." Tomorrow, this Friday, he can announce we're going completely action based for our game.
Yeah.
It's
what worked out for combat. This was the best way that we can make combat feel good. So we're going 100% action based. Get ready for it.
Yeah, for sure. And so, I like having these kind of discussions because everything is still on the table to be changed. I think there are some, we're not going to change the node system like all over, right? We're not going to do a whole makeover on that. But I mean, as far as changes in how the speed, the leveling can be implemented, all that's still on the table, So I think the one thing for me, and this is going back to like 2006 before I played World of Warcraft, I played Final Fantasy 11. Did you ever try Final Fantasy 11?
Very lightly, but yes, I'm very familiar. Yeah.
You cannot play that game by yourself past level 10. And it's meant that way. You need to do everything in a group. Like everything after level 10 is all group based. And if you died, you lost experience. And if you died with 0 experience, you de-leveled. And so I got up to level 30 on a I think it was like a monk, but it was called something else, like a brawler. Pugilist. It was a pugilist.
Yeah.
And I was in a group, and I don't know if I was just in the crappiest group ever, but the guy that was taunting kept overpulling and killing the group. I went from level 30 to 26 in 25 minutes, and I quit that day.
Yeah.
Quit. You know, so I heard, Steven talking about the XP debt that's going to be in Ashes of Creation, and I get very like nervous when I hear that, because I understand that death should matter, but if you're already having an XP debt, and then if a graveyard is not near you and you have to run an insanely long way to get back to your body, and then you're also like if you were gathering herbs, all that's going to be taken away from you too. That's a lot of, like, I think to a lot of people that's too much, you know what I mean? And
Fair.
So I would like to get your opinion, because I've heard people say, oh no, you just need to grow some hair in your ball sack, or whatever. Like in my day, this happened all the time. Oh, clearly you didn't play Ultima Online or EverQuest 2. And so no, I didn't. I played WoW because it was very casual focused, and it's so funny to say that even about vanilla World of Warcraft, but even to those hardcore players, WoW was super casual compared to Ultima Online or EverQuest 2 or any of those games. Dark Age of Camelot, like those games are hardcore. So Steven's talking about resurrecting hardcore principles, and believe me, I like some of those hardcore principles. I'm a huge fan of the caravan system, because in World of Warcraft, if you wanted to buy something from the auction house, it goes instantly to your mailbox. You get that to your character, and you can mail it to an alt, mail it to your friends. There's really no gameplay there. That's not going to be the case in Ashes. So don't get me wrong. I am all up for certain hardcore aspects, but I think the debt XP, and again, is that de-leveling too, or is that just?
He said it won't de-level. It is experience. Okay. It is a debt, and hopefully, and it's been talked about. We haven't gotten a straight answer. Hopefully, there's a cap. Right? So you can get EXP debt up to 50% of your current level, or something along those lines. And you're not necessarily losing experience. It's just that you need to get out of this debt, and you'll be right back where you were. If you were at 90, because there are games that do that, right? I'm at 99% to the next level, and then, I'm starting to lose experience, and I've got to start all over. Nope. Once you clear that debt, boom, you're right back there. I agree with you. I think that's going to feel bad. You're out, you're by yourself, you're gathering, you get ganked. It's meant to encourage stuff, and we can get into the whole corruption system around that. It's meant to encourage you to be with people and to hang out with people, but that's always been a fear in the back of my mind, is what happens. We have 60% of MMO players play them as solo RPGs until they're forced to do
for sure
content.
So can I rephrase my question, or rephrase my answer?
Absolutely.
So I am down for XP debt if it is only PvP based. If I am killing a mob and the mob kills me, I shouldn't lose XP at all. If I am in a raid setting and we die to the boss, no XP debt. I am down for having death matter in player versus player content. That's where I think it would really shine. I think if you are putting that also on the PvE system, I mean, golly, as a raider, we know how often we can die. And to already knowing that we're just going to be, in the end game, I don't know how that's going to work if you're max level, if XP debt's even going to matter at that point. But I know some of the world bosses are going to be not just max level dragons. Like, you can do them at other levels. To me, I think it'd be very unfortunate to have XP debt when it comes to PvE. If it's PvP, I'm actually down for that, because I do want death to matter. I want it to feel that adrenaline when you see a purple person and you're like, oh God, okay. Because I know me and my future wife, we want to like quest together and do mats together and stuff like that. And so, having somebody with you like that is going to be very critical, right? But again, if they see you level or mining or picking herbs for 2 hours, and that person comes back and like they're still here, I may want to try to kill them. I like that thrill for PvP. I just think it would be very stupid in PvE. So.
You're punishing people. If you do that in PvE, you're punishing people for doing content, right?
Correct.
You're 100%, and that you shouldn't have a punishment for doing that. I'm trying to remember in Alpha 1, if we died in a PvE situation, did we have experience debt? I believe we did. I might be wrong about that. There were multiple times that a guildie would come along and as a joke just attack me, so I had experience debt through a lot of Alpha 1. Yeah, it's but I agree with you. I think that the experience debt system could use a little fleshing out as to what feels good, what feels bad, what's too much, and what isn't enough. Even if it was something along the lines of, I would be okay with it in PvE in this scenario. There's an invisible debuff you get. If you die to this boss, on the third time that you die, you get 2% experience debt. It's not much, it's just enough to let you know that you're there. Even like 5% experience debt. Something small where you're like, oh, okay. I mean, talk about something to, anyone's been in a raid. At some point, you're gonna have to tell your raiders, okay, guys, wake up. Everyone focus up. Let's get going. We know half of you are falling asleep. You're phoning in this fight. Let's just do it. Something like that that's punishing into the group as a whole. I could also see that leading to a lot of toxicity in communities of, it's like, oh, well, what did you do today? Why aren't you max level? I'm not max level because we wiped 10 times on the raid, and so I'm still in experience debt from that dungeon the other day. I'm still trying to grind that out, and I don't have any quests. That's where the negativity and the toxicity will come from, which is part of the reason we're getting rid of DPS meters, right? Like no DPS meters, no toxicity, you eliminate that. So I think encouraging a community that's not going to be toxic and encouraging and having systems that support that. So I can get 100% behind what you're saying here. Okay, so PvP, experience debt, no issue. Even if you're a non-combatant, that once again, that's another little piece that's going to force you to get back in there and fight.
Yeah. And I think even for PvP, it should also be somewhat of a choice too. I think there should be a choice in, if I am farming for 2 hours for certain mats, right? If I am, I'm not fighting anybody, I'm a good boy, whatever. And somebody purple comes up to me and wants to kill me and take my stuff. If I don't hit them at all and I just stay there as a pacifist, I shouldn't lose XP. I should lose more mats because I'm choosing to not lose XP, but I'm willing to have them have more of my mats. Now, if I engage combat, I should have XP debt if I lose, but I shouldn't lose like hardly any of my mats. I should like maybe 10% instead of like 50 or 60%. So I think I would love that dynamical choice as a player as to, okay, I'm like 10% into my level. It took me a long time. Like, I don't want to lose this XP. I also have to face the fact that I have over 200 of these stupid herbs that I've been gathering. Yeah. So you have to pick your poison, right? I think that would be a great almost solution there, right? To see like, what would you want to do? Do you want to engage combat and not lose, or to lose a little bit of debt but not lose all of your freaking mats? Or am I just going to sit here, not accrue any XP debt, but 80% or some crazy number of my mats is going to be taken now because I died and didn't engage in combat? What do you think about
I like that? I like that system a lot, right? Where it's, you're here, you're on experience and mats, and it's going to level out. At some point, it becomes a little bit more of a level thing. It's okay, I'm losing more mats, less experience debt, more experience debt, less mats. And the answer from the community in general will be get good, win the battle. But let's just assume that you're not going to win this one, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm a noob.
Yeah, it's I'm out here gathering herbs for 2 hours. You guys, you think I can win a PvP fight? It doesn't exist. That person doesn't exist. But that's a choice, right? And what do we always say? We always come back to it. Choice matters, right? So having that ability to make that choice. Now, I'm curious as to how that would fit in within the corruption system where I didn't fight back, so now they kill me, they're corrupted, now they have even more of a hard time because they're going to start losing stats, they're going to get weaker and weaker, they're going to accrue more debt if they die, they're going to drop more stuff if they die. It'd be really interesting to find the balance between that, because it isn't, heads or tails, it's very much rock, paper, scissors between, green, purple, and red. But I would, if you put that in the forums, I would support that idea. I think that's an amazing idea. I think that because experience debt can feel bad, right? Especially if it gets big enough and you maybe have a limited play style. You might be talking about a week. You might be talking about 2 weeks worth of doing things just to get back on your progression path. And I know there's a percentage of the people out there that will click the unsub button. They'll say, screw it. This is too hard. I don't want to deal with this. Unsub.
And again, I don't think people should be punished for doing content. Like, I don't. And no. I think, again, like, you are going to have to kind of be a little bit different minded playing this game, right? Because people are going to want to do it solo. They're going to want to do everything solo. And that's not a game you want to play like that, especially if you're going to be an adventurer, a gatherer, a sailor of the seven seas, you know, whatever the case is. Like, this game is not meant to be played by yourself.
Yeah. But
there's that choice. And I had heard back when Alpha 1 was a thing that corruption was too punishing. Since you actually played Alpha 1, how did you feel when it came to the corruption system as a whole?
It was definitely too punishing. Definitely too punishing early on. Some of that was just tuning, right? I mean, it was Alpha 1. It was I chalked it up to tuning. I'm going to make, like, I'll reserve my judgments on the system until we get into Alpha 2 and start to see some of these systems a little bit more fleshed out, to start to see some real numbers. I mean, I would die in PvP, and I was up at one point up to like 60% experience debt. Now I was max level, so it didn't matter. So it was weird that I was I was level 15, which was max level. So, but that not mattering really makes it less impactful. So I will agree with that point. I'm curious to see how many people end up hitting max level and are just running around with a max bar of experience debt, and they're just like, doesn't matter. I can't ever clear it. There's too much. I'm not earning experience at max level. And I wonder if there's a debuff or something that could be associated with that would be another gameplay loop. Or maybe that's just there to encourage. If you created a debuff around that, maybe that's just there to encourage people to continue to do quests even at max level, continue to do content, continue to explore, experience things, build ships.
No, correct. So another kind of fear that I have, and this is me as a 16-year-old MMO gamer person, do you feel like Ashes is kind of convoluted? Like, do you feel like it's too much, like, for someone to grasp as the scope of this game?
I kind of do, right? I see it. New World, I don't know if you played any New World. New World was
I did.
Pretty simple.
I only played not even 20 minutes before I literally refunded my money. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, it was a very simple game. You could have watched a 30-minute YouTube video and know all the things that you need to do. These are what town boards are. This is how you level up your skills. This is how you level up all of these things. Not really an issue. I do fear that Ashes is so convoluted that coming in day one, if you don't follow this game at all, don't follow this game, and then your friends say, hey, Ashes of Creation released this week, and you jump in, it might be so much, because there is so much to learn. The systems are so deep. You go through the whole thing, you're just randomly browsing the shop because you want to look at cosmetics, and now you're like, oh, well, there's monster tokens. What the hell's a monster token? Now I got to learn this whole new system. This is a whole nother piece to it. Oh, I didn't realize that X is actually punishing and that Y is the way that I want to do this. It might end up being convoluted. I hope the systems, while the systems themselves are complex, are presented to the public, to the gamer, to the user in a very simple way, right? And I think that possibly not allowing DPS meters, not having a forward-facing API is going to help with that, so that nobody's going to come out and make a video about this is exactly how many people you want to kill in your corrupted state before you stop killing people. And, that way you're not going to have a new player saying, oh, I killed 12 people, but apparently min-max is 7 people. And just not getting into those really deep systems within a game that you see in every Korean MMO.
Wait a minute. From one hardcore raider to another, you don't want a DPS meter in Ashes of Creation?
No.
How
Absolutely
dare
not.
you? How
so
dare you?
Listen, all right, now we're gonna school the WoW kitty. Here we are.
All right, the podcast is over.
My favorite thing.
Bye, it's Fayne.
It's done. Later, guys. No, okay. Here's what it is. Because WoW, Blizzard as a developer got lazy. They said, we're not going to have quality of life features in our game. We're just going to let you guys make them. Because when I downloaded World of Warcraft to play Shadowlands, I was streaming it in Discord, and my guildmates were like, what the hell's wrong with your screen? They couldn't even recognize that I was playing base level World of Warcraft, right?
Your interface
so here's how it was just normal. It was what they really, it's out of the box. It was fresh out of the box, right?
Oh, okay. So
here's how DPS meters should work. Here's how DPS meters should work in Ashes.
Okay.
You get a tank, you get a healer, and you get 2 rangers, and you get in Discord together, and you tell the ranger, do your rotation on this tank for 30 seconds. Okay, stop. Tank, how much damage did that do to you? Tell the second ranger, do yours. Okay, why is there a 30% difference between your guys' damage? Let's figure it out. Let's, instead of just numbers appearing on a screen to tell you how much damage you're doing, actually put in the work to do it. You're gonna have to put in work in this game.
Okay.
And you shouldn't even be scared of doing that within the actual thing. Now, I know that everyone's gonna say, well, you're not gonna know who's slacking in the raid, who's not carrying their weight, who's not. That should be known beforehand. And if you have a slacker in your raid, guess what? You don't complete the raid, and that's fine. And it's up to you guys to identify that. And you can identify that based on ability usage. I'm fine with people recording. Everyone, download OBS. We're going to go into the raid. You're going to record your whole raid. We can't figure out who's slacking. We're going to review everyone's VOD. I'm fine with that, because what this allows is it allows the hardcore to achieve meaningfully above everyone else. The hardcore in a game like WoW, I have the same DPS meter everyone does. I have the same, alerts when the boss is going to do some ability. I get the brr or the whatever random sound and the flash on the screen. You want to find out how to get there? Put in the work. You don't put in the work, you just might not finish this raid. And that needs to be okay. And if someone's not willing, if you're not beating the giant golem boss at the end and somebody's not doing their part, you'll find out. If somebody doesn't want to review their VOD, they're out. Just get them out, get someone in.
Okay. So I'm going to play a complete devil's advocate in this one, because
I'm down. I'm ready.
I want DPS meters in this game because I want to be as toxic as fuck. No, I'm just joking.
It's okay to be wrong. It's okay. We have plenty of people that are wrong. I read a post on the forums this week about a dirt debuff, and you could clean everybody's freeholds for them. It was awful. There's a lot of wrong people, so why do you want DPS meters? Let's hear this.
So I'm going to bring up Final Fantasy because, again, great community that is cultivated over there in Final Fantasy. If you want to be a casual raider in Final Fantasy, do the extremes, maybe attempt some savages, it really goes down to the people, the guild you are in, or the raid team you are in, to see are they like-minded. I hate people that are very casual in nature, go into a hardcore environment and expect them, the hardcore environment, to now be casual because a casual person's there. I also hate the opposite. It's a casual environment. We're here to have fun. We don't care about that DPS meter stuff. And a hardcore person comes in and they're like, what the hell? Why is Suzy Q not doing her damage? She's literally like just auto attacking. Like, that person clearly should not be in that environment. Like, and my whole thing is, as a hardcore, I wouldn't say a hardcore, but I was always a pretty semi-hardcore raider. I went into parsing numbers because for me, I wanted to do the best ability that I can potentially do. Without DPS meters, how do I even know where to start optimally with rotation? I have no numbers. I have nothing to really base it off of, Do
your rotation versus someone else's rotation. Someone else of your class and your augment. Get together, figure out the rotation.
But how am I going to know? My whole thing is that
beat on a tank. Find a tank, beat on them. They can look at their bar and they can say, I went from 1,000 health to 600 health. And the other one's like, I went from 1,000 health to 300 health. And then identify. So here's what I like. I get that it's going to be more work. And everyone out here's like, the game's already so hard. Why do we need more work? I love that we are not analyzing rotations, abilities, and performance live. It's raid night. We've got 3 or 4 hours that we're going to do this thing. Even if we're banging our heads against a wall, we're not doing it live. We can actually have raid preparation. What is raid preparation right now in WoW? I could download WoW right now, log in, and someone would say, we just need this spec and you need to be this eye level. That's it. That's all we want is this spec and this eye level. There's no testing out to see what you're doing. There's none of that. Part of what we have within our guild, or that we were planning on having, is we are going to have archetype specialists, 8 archetype specialists. You're the ranger specialist. You know what the ranger, why is he using X ability as an opener? He should be using Y ability as an opener. Learning that, figuring that out. Why is our tank not holding enough aggro? Oh, you're not using this. This needs to be used on cooldown. You save this one here for any of the aggro drop mechanics. Things like that. I think putting in the work is really going to allow people to come together. We did that in Wildstar. We didn't have DPS meters in Wildstar. And I remember at one point as a spell slinger, and someone was like, what? They're like, I feel like I'm just out damaging you. And we got on, we both pulled some mobs and he killed it twice as fast as I did. I'm like, what are you doing differently? He's like, what are you doing? We talked about it. And he's like, if you do this and this part of this debuff increases the rest of your damage 30% for the rest of your rotation. I'm like, oh, I made that one simple change and I was doing more damage. We didn't need a DPS meter to tell us that. It's somewhat intuitive, right?
So, but how come you don't think that the two can't coexist? Because again, in Final Fantasy, they coexist. There's people that don't give a care in the world because there isn't add-ons the way WoW has it in that game compared to Final Fantasy. You have to do some trickery to get a DPS meter going in Final Fantasy, but people do it. There's a lot of people who don't, but I think both can coexist, and I think that to me is where the community is important, because where you fall, I have always been a very helping-handed person. When I was playing my warlock and I was demonology and I talented my way, I was at the training dummy doing my rotation, looking to see what my average DPS a second was at a 3-minute interval. And then I would have the other warlocks and I would tell them, this is how I open, this is what I do. And that was the kind of energy and community that I try to cultivate. But again, I feel like what you're trying to say is great. And the people that are like-minded will go into that group and be like-minded together and help each other. But I feel like why also gimp the people that want to be numerically hardcore and give them almost like having to do more work, when really if you just had DPS meter for them, they would analyze it all on a spreadsheet. And if that's the kind of gameplay they want to make themselves feel happier playing, why can't that happen? Like, that's what I'm saying.
Did you ever play Overwatch ever?
I've dipped my toes into Overwatch every now and then.
Okay.
It was very seldomly, and honestly, it just wasn't my kind of game.
So part of it, when it switched to this, the GOATS meta in the middle, which kind of killed it, which instead of being 2 tanks, 2 TPS, 2 support was 3 tanks, 3 support. We don't need any DPS, right? That existed in the game for a while. It didn't just randomly show up. A random Contenders League team named GOATS decided to just run that as a meme. And then every professional team ran that for 2 years straight. It was boring to watch and it was awful. And then people found a counter for it and some buffs and things like that. But my point being that a thing existed that was the most powerful and nobody else could figure it out because the common denominator was, oh, you just do A and B and C. What I want to avoid in this game, where it takes 250 hours potentially to get to max level, and not to mention everything else, is for people to say these are the best classes. These are the things, because I think there's so much that you're going to see that affects a class besides just its class and how they've spec'd out and what weapons they're using and how they use their abilities. That's part of it, right? We can then get into guild buffs within the guild augments. If I'm in a smaller guild, so I get these, which makes me a better raider. Instead of having size, we went with these things. That in of itself, I don't want it to then be the meta that everyone's in a 30-person guild. That would be awful. That's not exciting content. We need large guilds, we need small guilds, we need guilds of all size. Well, we're all this one religion because that's the best religion for raiding. You have to be this religion because those religious buffs. You have to be in this social academy. There's so many things that augment your skills, and we are, yes, waiting to see exactly how they augment them, but there are so many potentials of how things augment. Maybe you're in the Thieves Guild, and if you're in the Thieves Guild, you get a 0.5% auto attack. You attack 0.5% faster.
Yeah.
Well, that might mean that everyone has to be in the Thieves Guild and you have to use your auto attacks because you're actually putting out more damage than using your abilities. Or you need to be using your auto attacks more. Or you need to do this. I think DPS meters help identify that, and I don't want to identify that. I want the meta to not exist. The second there's a meta, I feel like we failed. Right? I mean, in Shadowlands, so going into Shadowlands, I played a Holy Priest. I was a Holy Priest for the raid. Let me tell you something about Holy Priest. Worst healer. Literally worst healer. Would have never known that because I parsed in like the top few percentage.
Yeah.
Like after I stopped sucking, which I sucked for a long time. But after I stopped sucking, I had some like 97% parses. Now, it would not be known that I suck, and I will agree, right? It's hard to raise the floor when you don't know that the floor needs to be raised. But forming metas, knowing exactly what is best in, this is my best in slot item. This is mine. I want to leave that up to the old school way, the spreadsheets. People testing, trying, experimenting, versus straight, oh, well, yeah, I picked the wrong religion, so now I have to totally redo my religion. If that's the religion you like, go with that religion. No one's going to tell that you're doing 0.07% less damage.
Oh, for sure. Again, just to play devil's advocate, it's all about the community you're around. Like, and
for
again,
sure.
that's all I'm trying to say is that I feel like the reason why Final Fantasy is as successful as it is because they try to cultivate a non-dominant, a non-toxic, like, you know, because you can get banned for linking DPS meters or calling someone out with their low DPS. And I honestly feel like Ashes should follow suit with that kind of thing. I think if you want to be a DPS metered guild or a raid or whatever, you need to be with like-minded people. And I just think by what you're saying, you don't want to be in a like-minded like DPS meter kind of guild, and that's okay because again, it exists in Final Fantasy. There's guilds that don't have DPS meters. They don't talk about DPS meters. They're there to have fun. They're not even like, some raid teams are like 8 people, and they have like 3 summoners, which isn't a meta, right? Like, I mean, you need to have like a variety of DPS there, but they do it because it works and it works for them, and they should do what works for them. And I feel like as long as no one in that team or in that guild is promoting that you guys are doing it wrong, this is the way to do it, like, then they're going to coexist just fine. It doesn't matter that there is another guild or other people that are like that, because in their realm, in their little inner circle, it's fine. It works. And I think that's why Final Fantasy is successful in that regard.
If they're getting success, right? Because then people can find their success. And this is a different thing about rating here as well, right? The rating isn't different tiers. It's just based on how well you do.
Correct.
And so everyone's going to look, when complexity limit comes into Ashes and pushes it, everyone's going to say, this is what we need as a raid comp, because complexity limit did it. So Ranger, you need to take Cleric as a secondary. You need to be 10 levels into the Thieves Guild, and you need to be following this religion but not be maxed out in it. That's what I want to avoid. And I guess that's my biggest thing against DPS meters. The toxicity itself, it's a good way for a lot of people to understand it, and it's why I sort of say I want to eliminate that toxicity because of that blah blah blah. I think that if you're in a toxic environment, you're in the wrong environment. Sure. I think you can get around other environments, and I think everyone that plays in Mmos is somewhat mature enough to understand that now. But I think that you eliminate some of that toxicity. You make, once again, the work more meaningful, because we spent 6 hours with the 5 Rangers in our raid group banging on a tank, and we had to figure out who was doing it the best, and it was hard. And that's kind of, it might feel like boring gameplay, but the success, the payoff, is a lot of fun. Running the same dungeon in WoW a million times to get that 0.1% drop mount is boring gameplay. It's mind-numbing. I watched Asmund do it. When he gets the mount 5 years later, he's so hyped, and the payoff is worth it. Of course, then he just goes off to the next mount, so it doesn't actually matter. But I want there to be work involved, and I feel like a big part of DPS meters helps solidify good versus bad, right? Not even in a guild, but as a community sense. This is a good build. This is a bad build. And I think that it discourages doing the work. I don't want anything to be handed to you. in this game. We don't all get flying mounts. You're not going to be able to do all the crafting. You're not going to have all the legendaries. In fact, a legendary is going to drop. You may never be able to achieve it. And even if you had all the materials and everything ready to go, oh, it's a 1 in a server legendary. You're not going to be able to have that. I think it's okay. So I don't want anything to be easy, because I and this is maybe slippery slope fallacy, but I think when you start making things easy and accessible, everything starts to go that way because people respond positively to it.
Well, I think you have something there, but again, to go back to Final Fantasy with Yoshi P and their design, complexity limit, when they did the race to world first for Final Fantasy for Endwalker, like the balance of their classes is so minute. The balancing as far as the overall structure of the classes or jobs, it doesn't really matter what you play. And I think if Intrepid plays their cards right, even with the 64 class system, really you're just augmenting 8 base classes, right?
Yeah.
So it is 64 classes, quote unquote, but really, like,
but it's 8.
But it's 8. And I think that's not a lot to balance in the grand scheme of things. And I think if Intrepid does it right, it really truly won't matter. Just like it really doesn't matter in Final Fantasy. Because if you do have those hardcore raiders that want to, like, oh, the ninja does 1% more damage, so we need a ninja, a black mage, a summoner, and a dragoon. Those are the 4 main DPS we need in our team, because those are the top, the top ones. We can't have anything else. Yeah, of course you're gonna have those people. But again, those casual people aren't even gonna Google best black mage whatever, because they don't care. They have a rotation that works. The game also teaches them how to play. It teaches them every 10 levels a new ability, how it works, how it incorporates into your rotation, so they don't need to look at anything. I think if Intrepid does follow that model of implementing a great presentation, and this also goes back into what you talked about with how is it too convoluted. If they play their cards right, and especially for how much time investment you're going to do for every 10 level bracket, they could have a great presentation to say, like, hey, now that you're at level 10, this is going to open up to you. You're level 15, now this opens up to you. You're level 20, now this opens up to you. So you get it in doses, right? And I think for their classes, especially, I think you're going to get your second augmented class at level 25. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I think the presentation needs to be nailed too when it comes down to this.
But I think you're going to see, and we saw it somewhat in Alpha 1, and I think that this is the way that the classes are going to go. And while I think that's a great system, I still agree that it is a little handholdy. Oh, here's your next ability. This is how it works into your rotation. Here's your next ability. I mean, you had, for the mage, first ability you get was Fireball. Some people then, when they got their next skill point, put it into the next skill. Some people leveled up their Fireball skill. There's a difference there, right? Yeah. My fear is always getting down to, you have to play, mage ranger with exactly this skill tree specced out. I don't want there to be a discernible difference. I don't want people to know. I don't want people to know that when they went mage cleric, they're actually doing less damage, significantly less damage. I mean, you should know significant, but I don't want you to know that you're doing 1% less damage. It shouldn't feel bad to play whatever class you want. It should just be an augment on that archetype. And I want there to be scenarios where everyone one day just learns that Ranger Summoner is, everyone said, I'm going to play Ranger Summoner. That's going to be my Ranger. No one ever plays Ranger Rogue. And then one day someone says, oh, but Ranger Rogue's actually more powerful if you build it out this way. And just come up with entirely new builds. You build it this way, you take this weird religion that you didn't know, you get yourself in a guild that's 150 people max with these buffs, and actually you're more powerful. They've always talked about with balance, rock, paper, scissors, not even. Everyone wants to talk about balance as being even. I think rock, paper, scissors is a much healthier, much easier way to do it. And I always want that to be happening, where the community says rock, 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 and someone's like, well, I'm going to throw paper. And they say, well, scissors, scissors, scissors. And then they say, okay, I want to throw rock. That's why I'm against DPS meters. I understand the argument for them. If they put them in, it would not be the end of the world. I would not be crying and saying, screw this game, I'm done. As soon as you get DPS meters in, though, you do have a little bit more of a forward-facing API. Things could get data mined. And I guess that's kind of the real fear around it, right? Of, I have this legendary thing, I need these legendary mats. Well, I can just go to this website that is data mined everything in the game, and I know that we need this node configuration to unlock this raid to get this dungeon, and this dungeon has these mats, or this boss will have these mats. I don't want that. I want it to be a natural process of discovery, and I think that's how you create content that's evergreen, right? Is when the server, I truly believe servers will get together and say, we've had these 4 metros here. We're never going to flip that 5th one. That's a really powerful kill. But we've had these 4 metros here, and we've done the raids, the dungeons around here. We've seen the content. You know what? Let's go ahead and just allow these to de-level. Smaller guilds, exterior nodes, siege them. We won't even defend it. We will let it de-level. We will go create a new metro somewhere else, or we'll level up something that's already level 3 or level 4, and hopefully that will give us new content. That's what I'm excited to see.
For sure. I mean, we're probably just going to agree to disagree on the whole thing, but I'll just say this, even opposite, if there isn't DPS meters in Ashes of Creation, I'm still going to play it, you know, but I just feel like you're never, ever going to get rid of the meta mindset. You look at New World, there's plenty of videos explaining meta weapons, meta builds. You're not ever going to escape it. But I think if Intrepid plays their cards right with the classes and the balancing, if they balance everything correctly to where it really doesn't matter, like what's 0.5%, you know? Now, if it's like completely off, you know, like 20% damage for this particular class, then of course there's issues. But I think if they do play it very narrowly the way Final Fantasy does, it's not going to be an issue. But you know, in conclusion, let's kind of like wrap up our conversation. I really want to end this on a high note. So why do you believe in Ashes of Creation? Like, why do you think this game is going to be a success?
I think this game understands something, and the developers behind the game really understand something that so many games don't. Steven has said multiple times, if something's not broken, I'm not going to fix it. People see systems in the game and they say, oh, that was from this game and that was from that game. And it's like, yeah, because it worked really well there. Why would I create some other system that isn't going to be great? So I think that these developers are true gamers. I believe that they are creating a game that the community wants. And I think that it's complex enough that the most hardcore min-maxer will be able to have so much to do, but it's niche enough that somebody can just sit in their freehold tavern and gamble, and that'll be a rewarding experience. So I think from top to bottom, you're going to have a rewarding gameplay experience here.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Google any Steven Sharif interview, like literally, like that's again, like you can't escape his passion. I mean, it's intoxicating, and I really do feel like he has a true vision for this game. And again, to mention Final Fantasy, like Yoshi P, the reason why it took almost 10 years for Final Fantasy to go from 1.0 to the disaster that was to now the true success that game is experiencing now was he had a vision for 2.0. They had a vision and a dream. They stuck with it. They evolved on it. They kept implementing on top of it. They weren't just doing what WoW did and just basically hitting dartboard and seeing the hell what sticks. Like they had it and they kept going with it. And there's a level of comfortability with each patch and expansion where the things that the people loved are back. They're there. They're there again. It's not changed. And I think as long as Steven does not change the overall vision of Ashes of Creation, I think we really do have a very special MMO in our hands.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And it's just something that I think the community is looking forward to. I've heard multiple people say that if we don't get this one right, maybe that's it for me at MMOs. This is the white whale. This is the great hope. You know, it's an indie studio. We're the underdog and we're going into the playoffs. Let's see what we can get done.
For sure. And so ItsFayne, where can people follow you? Where can people see more of your content?
So my content's everywhere. The best way to do is go to itsfayne.com. It has all of my links there. If you're a YouTube Andy, get on YouTube. If you are on Twitch and you like to KekW and Pepega, follow me on Twitch. I'm working on some TikToks. I got about 20 of them in the pipeline right now, just ready to start posting when I've got enough content. Follow me on Twitter. I have just weird Twitter takes. Twitter is a very meme thing for me, but you can follow me on all those socials and just come hang out. If you see me in the community, if you see me in the Discord, stop by and say hi.
And Man, I just really want to thank you so much for being like the very first on 1v1. It was just awesome talking with you, because we really didn't talk at all like before this, and it was such a great conversation, man.
It just flows, and one day down the road, once you've got a few of these out, I want to come and I want to turn this one around on you. How about that? That's gonna be my goal. Is down the road, because I was the first one you got to kind of interview and talk to. I want to come in and turn this around on you and come back on here, because I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much again for being here, and it was just a great conversation all around.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and definitely there will be more here on 1v1.